This week's case involves a skeleton found in a tree, and it has been unsolved for over 80 years. So, let's get started. Hello everyone! For those that are new here, my name is Brandy, and every Friday I bring you a true crime case or mystery with one or more of my fabulous felines. Fred has started becoming a fan favorite, so I wanted to make sure that he said hi to everybody. My adorable boy. He's so sweet. He's one of my sweetest cats. Okay, right along. And you've been asking for her for a while, and here she is, Darth Kittius herself. As you can see, she's getting to be a very big girl. She is growing so fast, and she is ornery, very ornery. So she does not like to sit still, as you can tell. Okay, run along. For my returning subscribers, welcome back, my feline friends, and a big shout out to my feline fans who help support this channel. So this case starts in April of 1943, right outside of Birmingham, England. Now, at the time, World War II is, going on across Europe, and it's just devastating a lot of places. So 4 teenage boys are actually walking through what's known as Hagley Woods. They're trying to hunt animals and find something to eat because the World War II rations that was given to them is not enough to sustain them, and they were still very hungry. So one of the things that they were doing is they were climbing trees and trying to find birds' nests to collect the eggs. Now, one of the boys had climbed this big Witch Elm tree. As he was looking around, he looked down, and in the hollow part of the tree, he saw a round white object. And he thought, ooh, what's this? As he got a closer look, he realized this was not an egg. This was a skull, a human skull. He jumped down from the tree and told his friends, and in order for them to get a closer look to prove that his friend wasn't lying, one of the boys grabbed a stick, and they, put the stick through the witch elm, was able to kind of get the skull and pull it out on the stick. They realized that their friend wasn't lying. It was actually a human skull. The boys became frightened and put the skull back, and then they told each other to never speak of it again. However, one of the boys, Tom Willits, actually went home, and he did tell his parents what they found, and his parents called the authorities. Now, as soon as police got wind that there was a skull in a tree, the Hagley Woods area became a complete crime scene. They had Tom show them the tree and the skull in it. Now, the Witch Elm itself, the tree, stood about 6 feet tall and had a hollow center. That hollow center would narrow clear down to like 17 inches, so it got pretty small. So police did find the skull. They pulled it out, and when they looked into the small space, they realized there was more. There was almost an entire skeleton in that tree, wedged down into that small space. So they started gently trying to pull the skeleton out, and along with the skeleton there was remnants of clothing. The skeleton was actually, they found a really cheap like gold wedding ring, and they found a shoe down inside the tree as well, and they ended up finding the other shoe like a few yards away from the tree. Now, the only thing that was actually kind of missing from the skeleton was the person's right hand. Further investigation and looking around the area, they did find some finger bones that were scattered around the area around the tree. Now, they initially believed that this was probably the doing of the local animals in the area. So the skeleton was then sent off to a local college for autopsy and to see if they could possibly identify who this was. So at the college, Professor James Webster performed the autopsy. Now, what he found out was that the skeleton was of a woman, and he found that the skeleton was anywhere from 25 to 40 years old, but probably more in the 35-year-old area. Now, he stated that this woman had given birth at least once in her lifetime. She was 5 feet in height, and her bones showed no sign of like disease or violence. So it wasn't like she was like shot or hacked up or anything. He also told authorities that this woman would have to been put in this Witch Elm tree while she was still warm, meaning that she had just died and it was before rigor mortis set in, or she was put in the tree as she was dying and died in the tree, because the space was so small that if rigor mortis would have set in, there was no way they could have got her clear down into the tree the way the skeleton was positioned. He also stated that the skeleton had been in the tree for about 18 months, so this woman would have died around October of 1941. Now, along with all these things with the autopsy, Professor Webster stated that it was unlikely that this woman took her own life. And the reason he thought that was because they found a piece of taffeta inside the skull's mouth. She was suffocated. Now, there are some reports that when the teenage boys came across this skull, that when they took the stick to pull the skull out, that they had wrapped a piece of fabric around the stick to, make it a little softer. Herschel, you're blocking my light, buddy. Come here. It's dark enough without you blocking my light. Come here. You want to say hi to everybody? My Herschel boy. One of my lovely, lovely blue-eyed boys. He has ice blue eyes, and Ghost has really dark ocean blue eyes. But they are both very handsome. Okay, where was I? Oh, so it was highly unlikely that these boys would have taffeta fabric on them, because taffeta fabric was used to make women's nightgowns and petticoats at the time. So they probably weren't carrying around a piece of taffeta with them. But ultimately, through the autopsy, Professor Webster stated that all signs pointed that this woman's death was a homicide. So in 1943, obviously forensic science wasn't, advanced as it was today. And one way they had at their disposal to determine who a body was to comb through dental records. Now, police had to do it the hard way, though. They put out kind of a press release calling all dentists in the Great Britain area to, look through their files and see if these unique dental characteristics were any of their patients. Now, this skull had kind of overlapping teeth in the front, and it was missing a tooth as well. So as dentists and police are combing through these thousands of records, but unfortunately no match was ever found. Now, there was also a lack of dental records at the time as well, because, well, let's be honest, there was a lot of bombing going on, so a lot of places were getting destroyed, but also dentists sometimes didn't keep records back then as well, so it was a very hit and miss back then. Now, others argued that the woman probably wasn't British at all, and that's why they never found a match to the dentist in the area. So the police really had their work cut out for them. Now, as the weeks went on, people began to sort of whisper some theories and everything. And one theory speculation was that the woman could have been a spy and was against, the British. And when she was found out by the British and she was executed, and then she was put in the Witch Elm. However, her bones showed no signs of violence. So, an execution or a hanging would be obvious, and none of that showed in her bones. So the months went on, and police, were still investigating. By Christmas of 1943, around 8 months after this skeleton was found, some graffiti started showing up in the town of Birmingham. Graffiti read, Who put Lubella down the Witch Elm? Now, soon after that, another graffiti would go up in another area of Birmingham, and it just said Hagley Wood Bella. Police determined that both these pieces of graffiti were done by the same person because the writing was the same. And then as time went on, like, more graffiti would kind of show up, and they always referred to the skeleton as Bella. So police took that into their investigation and started searching for anyone missing or otherwise, not around, that may be named Lubella or Bella. However, they did take into consideration that this just could be a prank, so they had that in the back of their mind as well. In either case, though, the skeleton and the remains were therefore known as Bella. Now, as you may have guessed by now from my opening, the police were never able to fully identify who Bella was to this day, but many theories came out over the years. So the first theory of who this person was came after a man named Joseph Jacobs was captured by the British Army. Now, he was captured near Hagley Woods in 1941. Joseph was a German intelligence officer who had parachuted into Hagley Woods. He was told that he needed to make contact with a woman named Clara Bauerle. So, Lubella, Clara Bauerle, kind of the same, right? Anyway, so Clara Bauerle was a German cabaret singer, and she was an actress. But she was then recruited by the Third Reich to be a spy. Side note, I know most of you know what the Third Reich is, but for those that don't know what the Third Reich is, the Third Reich is the Nazi regime that existed under Adolf Hitler from 1933 to 1945. Now, the British did not take kindly to spies, and so Joseph was executed by firing squad in 1941 after he was interrogated and gave him the name Clara. And he was the last person to be executed in the Tower of London. But they thought, could this Clara be Bella? Now, investigators determined that Clara was a real person. Now, she performed in both Germany and Britain, so recruiting her as a spy would be perfect for the Germans because she could get in and out easily. Now, when they looked into, her history, her records, they found all these places where she performed, but as of 1941, she had seemed to vanish without a trace. And she would have been 35 in 1941, the same age that Professor Webster stated Bella was when she died. However, after further research, they did find where Clara died in a German hospital in 1942. Plus, Clara was around 6 feet tall. She was like 5'10"-ish. So that was a full, 10 inches to a foot taller than Bella would have been. So, sadly, the case was not solved. Bella was not Clara, or Clara was not Bella. Anyway, you get it. Second theory came 2 years after Bella's discovery, and that was from a philosophy professor at the University College of London named Margaret Murray. Now, Margaret theorized that due to the fact that Bella was missing her hand and the bones were scattered around the tree, that this could be the work of like an occult clan. She stated that there is an occult ritual called the Hand of Glory, and that is where the hand is removed from the recently deceased because it may contain like supernatural powers and it needs to be detached from the body. So Margaret stated that there was a lot of clans around Hagley Woods in 1941-ish, and they still believed in witchcraft, and there was a lot of farming land around there as well. And so their belief was that if life was taken out of the ground through farming, that life needed to return to the ground through a blood sacrifice. So Bella could have been part of an occult clan and could have been a human sacrifice. And also, this theory has a little bit of weight because historically, if a body was put into a tree, that was also known as a way of imprisoning a witch after death. However, police did follow that lead as much as they can, but they never found any evidence of any occult plans around Hagley Woods, so they couldn't put any merit to Margaret's theory. Now, the next theory comes 10 years later after Bella was found, and it was by an anonymous note written by somebody named Anna, and she claimed to know how Bella lost her life, and it wasn't any supernatural occult or anything like that. Now, police were able to track this Anna down and actually pulled her in for an interview, and her name was Una, not Anna. So her story, it was that Bella was a Dutch woman and she worked as a German spy, and her contacts were working through a British officer and Una's husband, Jack, who was a pilot. So apparently Bella got in too deep to the spy ring and knew too much, and therefore she was taken out. Now, this theory isn't too far-fetched because at the time there was a lot of munition factories around Hagley Woods, and those were prime targets for spies during World War II. Now, the other story that I read on a couple other sources was that Bella wasn't taken out because she knew too much, that the whole thing was a mistake, that she was out drinking with her local spies or her contacts, however you want to put it, and it included Una's husband, Jack. Now, apparently Bella had too much to drink and had passed out. So as a joke, Jack and whoever she was with had taken her out to the elm tree and put her inside as a joke and left her. And apparently when Bella woke up, the space was so small she couldn't get out, and she was stuck and ended up dying there. So whichever those stories, whether it was a joke and an accident or a homicide, this is what Anna was telling the police. Anna would go on to tell the police that her husband actually felt, whichever story happened, he felt so bad about what happened to Bella that he ended up having a mental breakdown, and he would just have nightmares after nightmares, and he ended up being admitted to a mental hospital where he passed away in 1942, a full year before Bella was found. Now, Anna did not have a real name for Bella, so without that name, police were unable to prove or disprove Anna's story. In 1968, Donald McCormick, who was an author, published a book titled Murder by Witchcraft, which included stories about Hagley Woods, and Bella's case was included in the book. Now, Donald claimed that while he was researching this story for the book, that he somehow got his hands on some classified German files named the Abwehr files. Now, these files were German military intelligence, and they operated from 1920 to 1945. Now, Donald stated in these files, they talked about a spy, a woman, who was also an occultist working for the Third Reich. Now, side note again, the Third Reich is very well known for being immersed in the occult. And some people believe that the only reason Adolf Hitler came into power is because he made a deal with the devil, or these supernatural powers helped him come into power. I'm actually really into that historical side of the Third Reich and the occult. So if you would like me to do a video on that, I would so get into that. But you let me know if you want to see it, because some people aren't interested in that type of history. Anyway, okay, so this woman spy that Donald read about in these classified files was named Clara Bella. Clarabella had parachuted into Britain in the Hagley Woods area in 1941 and then was never heard from again. Donald goes to imply that Clarabella was captured by the British, interrogated as a spy, and was found to be not only a spy but an occultist on top of that. So she was killed. And like, Professor Margaret Murray had stated, she was killed and then the occult ritual was done by cutting off her hand because they thought she was a witch. Has some merit. Now, this theory again could not be proven or disproven because authorities couldn't get their hands on the Aboir files to corroborate Donald McCormick's story. So, now today, with the advances in DNA, you'd think that this could potentially solve the case, right? Let's just put Bella's DNA into the system, see what pops up. Unfortunately, there's one big problem with that. Bella's remains are missing. Apparently, after the autopsy, Professor James Webster had handed the remains over to another fellow professor to, store, however you store remains. And over the decades, Bella's remains were stored in 3 different areas: the college itself, the West Midlands Police Department, and then the West Midlands Police Department Museum. Apparently they have a museum. Then she just disappeared. Now, each place has gone back and just scored through their records of where she was transferred to and all that, and there's just a dead end. Nobody knew where she was put. So whether this was a case of she was put somewhere and somebody didn't document it, or she was stolen, they don't know. Now, luckily, when they did have the remains, a lot of pictures were taken of the skull and all of that. And so in 2018, Dr. Caroline Wilkinson was contacted and asked to make a facial reconstruction of Bella to go along with a book that some authors were writing as well about Bella. Now, the reconstruction shows a woman with the crooked teeth, big narrow set eyes, and a snub nose. It was published in the book, put out on the internet, published, but unfortunately nobody has come forward yet to identify who Bella was. Now, graffiti will still show up from time to time around Birmingham, not really letting this case die. In 1999, someone defaced the obelisk of England with the spray paint, and they accidentally spelled Witch Elm, which is spelled W-Y-C-H. They spelled it witch as in W-I-T-C-H. Or did they accidentally misspell it? Now, in 2016, somebody hung a cardboard sign outside of Hagley Woods asking the same question: who put Bella down the Witch Elm? The file on this case remains sealed by the police because they still consider it an ongoing and open, active investigation. So do you think any of these stories of who Bella was on the right track? Also, this case went towards some supernatural occult things, which I myself is interested in. Are you? Would you like me to add more supernatural occult type stories and mysteries to my lineup? If so, let me know in the comments and I can throw one in once in a while. So I'd love to hear what you think. Please hit the like button and comment down below. If you'd like to become a feline friend, please hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to become a feline fan, please hit that join button for special perks. Thank you guys for stopping by, and I will see you next week.